Everything you thought you knew about the Transformers universe is about to be shattered. Welcome to the original Transformers Shattered Glass. What's up everyone, James here, and I'm finally bringing you Fun Publications' Shattered Glass Universe. We've covered IDW's Shattered Glass Universe on the channel. I have a link to it at the end of this video. So this opens with Cliffjumper screaming as he flies out of a portal into this universe. Now this version of Cliffjumper is from the Marvel Transformers universe. However, it's the Fun Publications version of it where they use the Marvel Transformer comics as a backstory, disregarding the Marvel UK material, the Generation 2 comics, and set it after the events of Marvel Transformers. Now there was a story arc called Crossing Over that focused on Decepticon Landquake, Autobot Skyfall, and Cliffjumper. The events of that arc led to Cliffjumper arriving here. I'm not going to go too in-depth into it because I want to get to this story here, but I need to lay the foundation so every one of you has a complete understanding going forward of everything that happens in this Shattered Glass universe. But hey, if you still don't care to hear this, use the timestamps below to skip this part of the video. So in the Crossing Over story arc, Decepticon Landquake and Autobot Skyfall fought in the final battle of the Mini-Con Civil War. That took place in the Unicron Trilogy universe, the universe that was set in the Transformers Armada, Energon, and Cybertron series. Skyfall had attempted to shield Landquake while he performed his energy to matter state change ability. Basically, he has an ability that can manipulate Energon. However, a stray shot slipped through the shield and a massive explosion occurred, leaving no trace of Landquake and Skyfall. The Energon explosion had somehow rocketed them through space and time, causing them to materialize on Earth in the Marvel Transformers universe, landing right at the very feet of Megatron. A fight ensued and the Autobots arrived and saved them. Sometime later, Landquake, Skyfall, and Cliffjumper, during a battle in South America between the Autobots and Decepticons, fell very deep underground. They discovered a pool of rarefied energon and several ancient carvings that depicted Skyfall, Landquake, and a third Transformer the trio ended up meeting, the Autobot Breakaway. After meeting him, the trio was introduced to the Caretaker, a supercomputer claiming to speak for Primus that Vector Sigma designed to aid Breakaway during his assignment in this universe. Now, if you don't know who Vector Sigma is, it is an ancient and powerful supercomputer that dwells at the very heart of Cybertron, built to serve as a link between the Transformers and the god Primus. Primus had placed Breakaway and the Caretaker within Earth billions of years ago while it was still forming. The Caretaker explained to the trio that it was a terminal for the Vector Sigma network structure, extending across countless universal branches. Basically, it is a space bridge that could access different universes. The Caretaker had revealed to Landquake, Skyfall, and Breakaway they were three parts of an ancient Prime, one of the 13 original Transformers created by Primus, each dedicated to a specific task. The Caretaker told them the Prime they were components of was an ancient combiner that was the guardian of rarefied energon, Nexus Prime. Now, rarefied energon is energon in its purest form. It is an essential building block of a Transformer's life and a conduit for Primus's spiritual energy. Skyfall, Landquake, and Breakaway were charged with fulfilling their destiny of reunification, and the Caretaker sent them on their way to a new dimension to find the fourth component of their greater self. However, somehow Cliffjumper got diverted from them and ended up in the Shattered Glass universe. I will be doing a video of Skyfall, Landquake, and Breakaway's adventure after this first arc of Shattered Glass is over, or maybe I'll do it sooner. Returning to the story, Cliffjumper finds himself in the tunnels underneath Cybertron. Out of nowhere, the Decepticon Ruckus runs right into him. Shocked to see Cliffjumper, thinking that it's his universe's Cliffjumper, he immediately apologizes, begging to be let go. Before Cliffjumper can respond to him, Ruckus is shot from behind. The bot that shot him is revealed to be Shattered Glass Hot Rod. He and Cliffjumper have this back and forth because Cliffjumper is shocked by Hot Rod's new paint job, when in his view he just saw him hours ago. Hot Rod responds that he sounds defective because the last time he saw him was stellar cycles ago when they went to the Dark Mount Massacre. He never returned, so everyone thought he was dead. What's funny here is Cliffjumper points out Hot Rod's stash, and Hot Rod says he added the Van Dyke beard to make himself more distinguished. It's weird seeing any Transformers with a beard, but Hot Rod is the only Transformer who makes it work. Hot Rod takes Cliffjumper to Iacon and mentions Optimus, who he calls Ops, a nickname I don't think I've ever heard of Optimus being given before, but I like it. Cliffjumper meets with Optimus, who is excited to see that he is still alive, believing that this is his universe's Cliffjumper. He takes him through his base, showing him the new additions he's made at his headquarters since his disappearance, giving us a glimpse of how evil this Shatterglass Optimus is. He has decorated the halls of his base with the bodies of fallen Decepticons. He tells Cliffjumper it's to keep morale up and to show that the Decepticons cannot stand up to the might of the Autobot Imperium. He then shows Cliffjumper this room containing what Optimus calls the smelting pool, a pool that is a combined torture and recycling device being used to melt down Decepticons. In the ceiling of this room are hung up Decepticon bodies and body parts. Optimus holds his mock trials in a sort of kangaroo court here. Just like the Quintessons in Transformers the movie, we see Rumble is currently on trial, and it's being held by Bumblebee, aka Goldbug. If you've seen my coverage of IDW's Shatterglass universe, you know I love Goldbug in that series because of how ruthless he was. So I'm curious to see if this version of Goldbug is the same. Cliffjumper becomes enraged, asking what's going on here. Optimus takes it as Cliffjumper angry at the fact that he isn't executing Rumble. He even brings up a story of when he and his universe's Cliffjumper both executed a Decepticon prisoner by strapping an anti-gravity unit on his feet and slowly descending his body in the smelting pool until the heat destroyed the anti-gravity unit and he fell in screaming. This is how psychotic this version of Optimus is. He offers Cliffjumper the opportunity to execute Rumble as a way of celebrating and honoring his return to the Autobots. Cliffjumper refuses, saying this isn't the Autobot way. We don't kill for entertainment and it goes against everything we stand for. I can't believe I'm the one telling you this. This isn't justice, it's murder. You need to stop this. Optimus replies, "Oh, so unwise." He immediately blasts apart Cliffjumper right on the spot, no hesitation. Even though this is one of his most trusted soldiers, he still didn't hesitate at all. The other Autobots don't step in or try to defend him, they just laugh at Cliffjumper's current state. Optimus says, "I only let you live because you were once one of my closest aides. You seem to have forgotten what being an Autobot means." This is where we get a glimpse of how much Optimus is cracked in the head, which will be confirmed later that he's lost it. Optimus asks the bodies in the ceiling what should be done to Cliffjumper, and he answers for them: dispose of Cliffjumper until he gets his wits back. Optimus kicks Cliffjumper's body to his Autobots and orders them to dump his body in the Rad Zone, and says if the empties, basically bots who survive on spare parts and fuel they come by, that live there don't finish him off and he returns, he will be worthy of the Autobot symbol. Later in the Rad Zone, the Constructicons discover Cliffjumper's body. They radio to Megatron about their discovery and he orders them to bring him in alive. Once Cliffjumper awakens at the Decepticon base, he freaks out and makes a run for it. He ends up running right into Megatron. And I love the design of Shatterglass Megatron, it's just so awesome. I might like it more than Prime Megatron. Cliffjumper gets pissed when he sees Sideswipe with the Decepticons, because he's an Autobot. Megatron says he brought a former comrade to help. When Cliffjumper asks what do you mean by former, Megatron, under the impression that this is his universe's Cliffjumper, mentions to Sideswipe that maybe his memory circuits got damaged while he was in the Rad Zone, and they should have Shockwave check him. Sideswipe requests some alone time with Cliffjumper, and Megatron grants it and leaves with the other Decepticons to plan an attack on the Autobot ship, the Ark, which we will talk about soon. But this tells us that this universe currently takes place during the Great War on Cybertron, before the Transformers ever arrive on Earth. It's a lot different when compared to IDW's Shattered Glass series, where that story began on Cybertron after the Great War and after the War on Earth. Once they're alone, Sideswipe reveals to Cliffjumper that he knows he isn't this universe's Cliffjumper. Now Cliffjumper gets pissed and says, "Sideswipe, I'm tired of being shocked, confused, and generally angry. Tell me what you're talking about, or so help me, I will beat it out of you." Sideswipe replies, "Huh, you even talk like him. Everyone thinks you're Cliffjumper, Optimus Prime's crackshot sniper. Except, I know you aren't. You see, I saw the real Cliffjumper die during an ambush. Prime doesn't know that because I never got to tell him. So that means you're entirely something else." Sideswipe goes on to explain to Cliffjumper that while the Constructicons were repairing him, the scans they took of his body showed his frame was covered in a different energy matrix than theirs, and that his body is composed of positrons instead of electrons like theirs. When Cliffjumper says, "What does this all mean?" Sideswipe answers, "It means you're a long way from home, CJ." Another nickname we get here that I've never heard before, but it works so well. Concluding that Cliffjumper is from another universe, Sideswipe sums up the entire history of this Shattered Glass universe to him, which gives us the origin of Shattered Glass Optimus Prime. He explains that his Cybertron was once the crown jewel of the universe, a world truly at peace, that their ancestors lived in pursuit of knowledge and harmony. One day, a librarian named Optronics was one of the most obsessive archivists in the great Cybertronian archives. Unsatisfied with his station, he decided to scheme and backstab until he reached the highest echelons of Cybertronian society. Once there, he began to preach intolerance for Cybertron's state of affairs at the time. His philosophy was advancement through conflict, and those who had grown bored in Cybertronian society adopted his philosophy. In time, this philosophy turned into action, and he and his followers declared themselves autonomous from the rest of Cybertron's population, calling themselves the Autobots. They enhanced their bodies and created weapons. Optronics reserved the most powerful enhancements and weapons for himself. He was the first to undergo the modifications he designed and changed his name to Optimus Prime. One day without warning, Optimus launched his campaign of terror. Optimus Prime said, "Strike, my Autobots. Strike with all the power at your disposal. Let those who see our wisdom join us, and those who choose to be stagnant be cut out like the rotting cancer they are." Sideswipe goes on to say each one of Optimus Prime's attacks was preceded by an offer to join the Autobots. Those who refused were destroyed. As his power and control grew, so did his thirst for knowledge. However, one day, his cold calculations stopped, and he became vicious and erratic. The rumor is that he had discovered something so terrible that it destroyed his sanity. Still to this day, no one, not even his top lieutenants, knows what it was. Despite all the ruthlessness and power Optimus Prime and the Autobots displayed, a loose resistance force, using weapon designs stolen from Optimus, rose up and opposed them. The war against the Autobots began, but with no leadership, the resistance had no hope of winning. One day though, from the fires of the great city, Polyhex, came a champion who turned the loose and scattered resistance into a cohesive army. His name was Megatron. Through his leadership, the resistance managed to retake several strongholds, and through his own research, Megatron discovered a way to alter a Cybertronian form, so they could convert into other forms. With this new ability, the Resistance disguised themselves as vehicles and everyday objects, taking on the name the Decepticons. They were winning the war, using this new ability to deadly effect. However, Optimus Prime is a genius. It didn't take him long to figure out how to replicate Megatron's transformation tech. Despite that though, the Decepticons were still able to achieve a few victories, but not enough to overthrow Optimus. They need a major victory or they will soon fall. After hearing all this, Cliffjumper asked Sideswipe why he joined the Decepticons. and about the scar through his Autobot symbol on his chest plate. Also, if he's posing as a spy for Optimus. Sideswipe answers that he was once one of Optimus Prime's elite, but eventually saw his philosophy was warped and that he only cared about himself. The scar on his chest plate is a result of an ambush where his own Autobot comrades left him for dead. Now he wears it as a badge of honor and a reminder to make Optimus pay for crossing him. Now how Optimus crossed him, Sideswipe doesn't reveal. Cliffjumper, still unsure of who to really trust in this universe, decides to stay and help them because it's better than Optimus and the Autobots who left him for dead. Speaking of the devil, that's where we go to next. Optimus at his headquarters engaging with holographic autocombatants as Blur reports the current status of the Ark. He reports more plasma blasters have been installed and 20 Autobots are already on board. Optimus orders more troops to be put on board, but Blur points out though that the launching platform's structural integrity is already significantly increased by the weight of the plasma blasters. Optimus dismisses his concern because he did the calculations himself and tells him that they only need the platform up until they launch. When Blur mentions the Decepticons preparing an attack on the Ark, Optimus makes it clear that he isn't worried about it and welcomes their attack. After Optimus dominates the holographic autocombatants, Goldbug mentions to Optimus that someone called the Old One wouldn't have approved of this plan. Optimus Prime's response to Goldbug gives us more details on who this Old One is, and shows us, just like in the IDW Shatterglass universe, Optimus treats Goldbug like he's beneath him. Optimus says, "You speak as if he is still relevant." Besides, his approval only came when it suited his purpose. It matters not. He and his ambitions are now another world's problem. Our ultimate victory is at hand, Goldbug. We cannot afford any mistakes. Do you understand? When Goldbug answers, "Yes, sir," Optimus says, "Good. I would hate to see you share the same fate as these drones after working so hard to move up the Autobot ranks." Evil Optimus rules with an iron fist, and IDW Shatterglass Optimus is really similar, except I would argue this version is way more intelligent. Now the Old One they're referring to will appear in Skyfall, Landquake, and Breakaway's journey through the multiverse. That's all I'll say for now, but I'm sure some of you have a very strong idea of who that is. Returning to the Decepticons, in the Decepticon War Room, Starscream reports to Megatron on the additions the Autobots made to the Ark. Megatron gets frustrated by this because their original plan of attack will no longer work. When Cliffjumper walks in, Megatron greets him, and this is where we learn Optimus' specific plan when it comes to the Ark. Megatron explains to Cliffjumper that Optimus intends to use the Ark to conquer and plunder energy from other worlds to fuel Cybertron and basically create his own Cybertronian empire. However, Megatron mentions that the odds in attacking the Ark now are not in their favor. Now, yet another interesting difference between the Shattered Glass universe and the Prime universe is in the Shattered Glass universe there seems to be no Primus or Unicron, because when Cliffjumper responds to Megatron, by Primus he can't be allowed to do that. All the Decepticons and Sideswipe look at him confused. When Megatron asks who Primus is, Cliffjumper says, hello, ancient being of light who created the Transformers? We were supposed to be his last line of defense against a world-gobbling monster called Unicron, except we spent more time blowing each other up. Megatron replies, well, isn't that a fascinating tale? It is somewhat comforting to think that there may be a benevolent force behind our creation. Now Starscream interrupts, coming up with a plan to attack the launching platform instead of the Ark itself, suggesting they destroy the Energon storage tanks. That if destroyed, it will cause a chain reaction that won't destroy the Ark, but will destroy the launching platform, rendering the Ark inoperative for decacycles. However, Razorclaw points out that the tanks are likely to be heavily armored and guarded. Starscream responds that their universe's Cliffjumper had the glass gas gun, which is something I totally forgot Cliffjumper had in the original show. For those of you who don't know, Cliffjumper's glass gas gun can coat other Transformers and make their metal bodies as fragile as glass. He can do the same to metal structures or objects. So Starscream surmises that Cliffjumper here has the same weapon and plans on duplicating the formula it uses in order to create bombs they can drop on the tanks from above. With the new plans set, Megatron announces they will attack the Ark at sundown. As the sun begins to set, the Decepticons strike. Phase 1 is the Predacons sneaking in and taking out the guards of the Energon tanks. After that, Phase 2 is initiated. Starscream, Dive Bomb, and Whisper fly in and drop their payload of glass gas bombs on an Energon tank. They successfully destroy one of the Energon tanks, and then Phase 3 happens. Megatron, with the rest of the Decepticon army at his back, arrives in front of the Ark, and he yells, "Decepticons, attack!" Now, one thing I want to point out here, because he unfortunately doesn't get shine in this issue, is look at the design of Soundwave. He is all white with certain parts of his body colored baby blue. He looks sick. I love this design. If you've been around the channel for a while, you know Soundwave is my boy. Optimus points out to Megatron that the platform still stands despite the damage it took from the bombs. Megatron yells, "It isn't over yet, Prime." Optimus replies, "How sad that you believe that. Grimlock, destroy. Seekers, transform and roll out." What's cool here is in this universe is Shatterglass Optimus has his version of the Seekers, which is a trio of Autobot cars that consist of Goldbug, who's the leader, Hot Rod, and Blur. Now Megatron and Optimus's argument continues while the battle rages on. Megatron says, "Your tyranny ends here, Prime. Cybertronians will once again know freedom, which is their right." Optimus replies, "Never. The only rights they shall have are the ones I give them. The universe will be mine." Megatron responds, "Not as long as fuel pumps through my systems, Prime." Grimlock battles the Predacons, and two things I want to point out here is first, Grimlock is battling them alone, because in this Shatterglass universe, the rest of the Dinobots don't exist. At least, not yet. They will appear in the very next chapter of this Shatterglass series. The second thing is, in the Shatterglass universe, the Predacons consist of only Razorclaw, Dive Bomb, and Rampage. Tantrum and Headstrong aren't here. Another difference is that Razorclaw is a wolf instead of a lion, but Rampage is still a tiger and Dive Bomb is still an eagle. If you're wondering why they look so much smaller when compared to Grimlock here, it's because the artist drew them inconsistently, that's all. Now Optimus sees Cliffjumper on the battlefield and calls him a traitor. He fires at Cliffjumper. Megatron yells no and jumps in front of the beam, taking the hit. But before he goes down, he fires back at Optimus, not killing him, but putting him out of commission. Cliffjumper is shocked by Megatron's self-sacrifice, because after everything he's been through so far, and everything he's been told, he's still stuck in some ways with the mindset that the Decepticons are the bad guys and the Autobots are the good guys. But when Cliffjumper asks Megatron, "Why did you do that? I'm not one of your warriors." Megatron's answer finally shakes Cliffjumper out of that mindset and reminds him of his Optimus Prime. Megatron answers, "All life is sacred, even that of a stranger or an enemy. You are needed here because you represent the possibility of something better out there. Leave me and get to safety. This is our fight and that platform must come down." Cliffjumper responds, "You're right, Megatron, and it will." He heats up his engines and blasts into the sky. Using his glass gas gun, Cliffjumper destroys the remaining Energon tanks. The Ark's launching platform comes down. Optimus yells no. As the Decepticons leave the battlefield, Optimus fires into the sky and says, "You think this is over, Megatron? You have just sealed your fate. I will hunt down all of your warriors, one by one, until only you alone remain. Then I will rip you apart with my bare hands and crush your ember in my fist." I love Megatron's response. Megatron replies, "Stick it in neutral, Optimus. This day belongs to the Decepticons." Now Cliffjumper is like, "You really think you should have honked him off some more?" Megatron laughs and replies, "My friend, this is only the beginning. A new age has begun, and we would be honored if you joined our cause, because the fight is far from over." Cliffjumper says, Primus help me. I never thought I'd say this, but yeah, Megatron, you can count on me. This is the beginning of the Shattered Glass Great War. From here, the rest of the arc shifts from comics to tech stories with few images until the very last chapter, Invasion. So be prepared for future videos to be in that format. If you made it to the end, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it all. Make sure to hit that like button, comment below your thoughts, and subscribe. If you're listening to this on Spotify, hit that follow button. Other than that, have an awesome day, every one of you, and always remember every day to go beyond.